The topless video she accidentally sent her landlord was humiliating enough, but then she got stuck in an elevator with him for 47 seconds. He stared at her neckline, where the tattoo was visible, and asked, "Where did you get that design?" Welcome back to Proudly Black Stories, my beautiful, amazing Pride family. You all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, do comment below where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to officially join the Pride family. Now, let's get into today's story. Elara Brooks stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night, topless and trembling. Not from cold, not from fear, from the pure, visceral rush of having finally done something she'd been too terrified to do for 3 years. The tattoo was still angry red, the skin around it tender and swollen. Protective film covered the design, making the colors look muted, dreamlike. But even through the medical-grade covering, the phoenix was unmistakable. Wings spread wide across her sternum, the bird rising between her breasts in shades of crimson, gold, and deep purple. The tail feathers swept down toward her ribs, the head arched upward, beak open in what could have been a cry of pain or triumph. She'd walked out of the tattoo studio 20 minutes ago, still riding the adrenaline high that came from 3 hours under the needle. Her artist, a woman with full sleeves and kind eyes, had told her to take photos for the healing process. "Document the journey," she'd said. But standing here now, looking at this permanent mark of her freedom, Elara felt something crack open in her chest. 3 years. 3 years since she'd walked away from Caleb Sterling in the middle of the night, still wearing his grandmother's engagement ring because she'd been too panicked to think about taking it off. 3 years since she'd changed her name from Vance to Brooks, moved across the country, rebuilt herself from nothing. And this tattoo was supposed to be the final piece, the last act of reclamation. Her phone sat on the counter, and before she could second-guess herself, she picked it up and opened the camera. The video started recording. She looked at herself in the mirror at this woman who'd finally chosen herself and felt tears prick her eyes. "Maya." Her voice came out thick with emotion. "I finally did it. 3 years of being too scared. And look, I'm finally free. I'm finally me again." She laughed, the sound breaking slightly, and hit stop. Her finger hovered over her contacts, found sis, and sent the video before she could overthink it. The moment it delivered, satisfaction flooded through her. Maya was going to lose her mind. Her sister had been pushing her to get this tattoo for months. Ever since Elara had shown her the old sketch she'd been carrying around since 2016. Elara set the phone down and reached for her oversized shirt. That's when her phone buzzed already. Maya must have been awake. She glanced at the screen and her entire body went cold. The message hadn't gone to Maya. Read 11:47 p.m. Sat beneath the video preview, and above it the contact name that made her stomach drop through the floor. Julian Landlord. No, 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 no. She'd saved his welcome email just yesterday. Julian Thorne, owner of the Onyx Spire, the ultra-luxury building she just moved into with her new job money and her fresh start dreams. She'd saved him as J. Thorne Landlord, and her phone had auto-suggested him instead of Maya. Elara grabbed the phone with shaking hands, desperately searching for an unsend button that didn't exist. She just sent a video of herself topless to a billionaire, to her landlord, to a man she'd never even met. The phone buzzed again. Her thumb hesitated over the notification before she finally horrifyingly opened it. "Welcome to the Onyx, Ms. Brooks. Beautiful choice. The Phoenix suits you." Elara read it 3 times, then 4. Then she sat down on the closed toilet lid because her legs stopped working. "Beautiful choice. The Phoenix suits you. Not wrong number, not Please don't send me inappropriate videos. Not, you're evicted for sexual harassment. He'd called it beautiful. He'd said it suited her. And he'd responded in under 30 seconds, which meant Julian Thorne, billionaire recluse, had been awake at nearly midnight and had seen her video immediately. Ilara pressed her hands to her face and made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scream. She didn't sleep, obviously. She spent the next 7 hours drafting and deleting apology texts, each one more pathetic than the last. I'm so sorry that was meant for my sister. Sounded like a lie. Please disregard my previous message. Sounded like a corporate email. I'm mortified and will be moving out immediately. Sounded insane. By 7 a.m., she'd settled on saying nothing and simply dying of embarrassment. Then someone knocked on her door. Ilara, still in her oversized shirt and sleep shorts, peered through the peephole. A man in a courier uniform stood there holding an enormous arrangement of birds of paradise flowers. She opened the door. I think you have the wrong apartment. Ilara Brooks, 71A, he asked. That's me. But I didn't order anything. They're a gift. He handed her the arrangement and a small envelope, then disappeared down the hall before she could tip him. Ilara carried the explosion of orange and purple flowers inside, set them on her kitchen counter, and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The cardstock was heavy, expensive. The handwriting was precise, masculine. Ms. Brooks, no apology necessary. We all deserve to celebrate our rebirths. I trust you're settling in well. Should you need anything, I'm in Penthouse 72. The door is always open. Julian Thorne. She read it 6 times. No apology necessary. We all deserve to celebrate our rebirths. He understood. Somehow from a 60-second video, Julian Thorne had understood exactly what that tattoo meant. Her phone rang. Chiara Mendez's face filled the screen, her best friend's dark eyes bright with mischief, even over FaceTime. Tell me you're settled, Chiara said the moment Ilara answered. Tell me the Seattle penthouse is everything you dreamed. I did something insane last night. Chiara's eyebrows shot up. Good insane or bad insane? Because you're overdue for good insane. I got the tattoo, Chiara screamed. Literally screamed so loud Ilara had to pull the phone away from her ear. You did not. Let me see. Ilara angled the camera down, pulling her shirt aside to show the protected phoenix. Oh my God, Ilara, it's gorgeous. You finally did it. How do you feel? Terrified, free, and like I made a catastrophic mistake. The tattoo isn't a mistake. No, the tattoo is perfect. The mistake was accidentally sending a topless video of it to my landlord instead of Maya. Chiara went silent for 3 full seconds. Then I need you to repeat that, Ilara explained. The wrong contact, the immediate red receipt, the response. When she finished, Chiara looked like she might pass out. Wait, your landlord. Ilara. Who owns the Onyx Spire? Some billionaire named Julian Thorne. Why? Chiara's voice went up an octave. Julian Thorne built Thorne Industries from nothing after his family disowned him. He created encryption software that governments use. He's like American tech royalty. Ilara's stomach flipped. You're joking. I'm not. He's also insanely hot and a total recluse. Nobody's seen him in public for like 5 years. There was some scandal, but nobody knows what really happened. Chiara leaned closer to the camera. Ilara, you sent a topless video to one of the most powerful, mysterious men in Seattle, and he sent you flowers and called your tattoo beautiful. This is a nightmare. This is the start of a romance novel. What are you going to do? Hide in my apartment forever? Or, Chiara said slowly, you could go upstairs and thank him for the flowers. Absolutely not. He said his door is always open. Chiara, I can't just show up at a billionaire's penthouse because he sent me flowers after I accidentally flashed him. Why not? You've already seen each other naked. Emotionally speaking. Ilara hung up on her, but she couldn't stop thinking about it, about the note, about the fact that he'd responded personally immediately at nearly midnight, about the way he'd said the Phoenix suited her, like he could see something in that design that meant more than just pretty artwork. She went to work, tried to focus on spreadsheets and fraud patterns, failed miserably. At 11 p.m., she came home exhausted, rode the elevator up to the 71st floor, and tried not to think about the fact that Julian Thorne lived just one floor above her. The elevator slowed at 72. Ilara's heart stopped. The doors opened, and Julian Thorne stepped inside. He was taller than she'd expected, easily 6'2", broad-shouldered, wearing all black like he'd either come from a business meeting or a funeral. Dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it a few too many times, sharp jawline, and eyes that were the color of slate on a rainy day, gray and intense, and fixed directly on her. The elevator doors closed. They were alone in a space roughly 6 FTAX 6 FT, Ilara Brooks. His voice was low, controlled with just a hint of roughness underneath. Not a question, a statement. She managed to nod. We finally meet properly. The elevator descended, 47 seconds from 72 to 71, and Ilara counted every single one of them. The air felt thick. Her skin felt hot. She could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke. He didn't look away from her, didn't check his phone, didn't make polite small talk. He just watched her with an intensity that made her want to either run or step closer. The elevator chimed at 71. The doors opened. Ilara moved to step out, and Julian reached forward, his hand stopping the doors from closing. The movement brought him close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. Your tattoo? His eyes dropped to her neckline, where the edge of the Phoenix was just barely visible above her blouse. The Phoenix. Where did you get the design? Her throat went dry. I've had this sketch for years. From Chicago. Why? Something flickered across his face. Recognition, then pain. Chicago. When? 2016. I was at a conference. I met this artist at a coffee shop and Ilara trailed off because Julian had gone completely white. Why? What's wrong? What did she look like? Dark hair, green eyes, paint stains on her hands. The memory was fuzzy, but certain details stuck. She gave me this sketch on a napkin and said I needed it more than she did. It was the strangest thing. I kept it in my journal for years before I finally got it done. Why are you asking me this? Julian's hand tightened on the elevator door. A muscle in his jaw ticked. That was my sister, Serafina. She died a year later. The world tilted sideways. That's impossible, Ilara whispered. I wish it was. His eyes met hers again, and there was such raw grief there that Ilara felt it in her chest. She lived in Chicago until 2017. She was an artist. She used to draw phoenixes obsessively the year before she died. The elevator started beeping, an angry sound indicating the doors had been held too long. Julian stepped back. Let them close. And Ilara stood frozen in the hallway of the 71st floor, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The tattoo on her chest suddenly felt like it was burning. She made it inside her apartment, locked the door, and immediately went to her bedroom. The old journal was in a box she hadn't fully unpacked yet, buried under winter clothes and keepsakes she dragged across the country. It took her 20 minutes to find it. The sketch was still there, pressed between pages of her messy handwriting from 7 years ago. The napkin had yellowed slightly, but the drawing was pristine. A phoenix in flight, wings spread, every detail exactly as it now appeared on her skin. She flipped the napkin over, On the back, in faded ink, words she'd forgotten were there. For the girl who's still in the cage, you'll fly soon. S. Ilara sat on her bedroom floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes and old memories, and tried to make sense of what was happening. She'd met a woman in a coffee shop 7 years ago, a random encounter. The woman had drawn her a phoenix on a napkin, told her she needed it, and disappeared. And that woman was Julian Thorne's sister. And she was dead. What were the odds? What were the actual statistical odds of something like this happening? Ilara pulled out her phone and did what any rational person would do. She Googled Julian Thorne. The search results were extensive. Photos of a younger version of the man she'd just met in the elevator back when he smiled for cameras. Articles about Thorne Industries, about his revolutionary encryption software, about his meteoric rise in the tech world. Then 5 years ago, the articles changed. Julian Thorne disappears from public life after family scandal. Thorne Industries CEO steps back from public role. What really happened to Julian Thorne? But none of the articles had details, just speculation, rumors, theories. Ilara kept scrolling until she found what she was looking for. Serafina Thorne, 24, found dead in Chicago estate. Suicide suspected. The article was from 2017. It was brief. Serafina Thorne, daughter of business magnate Arthur Thorne, had been found dead at the family's Chicago property. Preliminary reports suggested suicide. The family had declined to comment. Ilara stared at the tiny photo accompanying the article. It was definitely her, the woman from the coffee shop. Same dark hair, same delicate features, same paint-stained fingers visible even in the grainy image. She'd given Ilara a sketch, told her she'd fly soon, and then she'd died less than a year later. Ilara didn't remember falling asleep, but she must have because she woke up on her bedroom floor, phone still in her hand, sunlight streaming through the windows. Someone was knocking on her door. She stumbled to answer it, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and found Julian Thorne standing in her hallway holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "We need to talk," he said. Ilara stepped aside and let him in. He handed her one of the coffees. She took it automatically, noticed it was exactly how she liked it, oat milk and vanilla, and wondered how he knew that. Then she remembered her apartment application had asked for emergency contacts and dietary preferences. He'd read her file. Of course he had. Julian stood in her living room, looking at the still unpacked boxes, the minimal furniture, the birds of paradise flowers on the kitchen counter. "I need to tell you something," he said. "You didn't get this apartment by chance." Ilara set down the coffee. "What?" He turned to face her. "When your application came through, I saw your name." "Ilara Vance." He searched her face. "You changed it to Brooks, but Vance was your father's name. Detective Robert Vance." The coffee turned to acid in her stomach. "How do you know my father's name?" "Because 7 years ago, your father was investigating my father." "Arthur Thorne." Julian's voice was raw. "Careful. He was getting close to exposing him for money laundering and fraud. And then your father was killed. They called it a random mugging." Ilara sat down on her couch. Had to. Her legs weren't working properly. "My father died in a mugging," she said slowly. "It was random. Wrong place, wrong time. That's what the police said. That's what my mother told me." Julian pulled a folder from inside his jacket. He set it on her coffee table. "It wasn't random." She stared at the folder like it was a bomb. "I don't understand." "My father had him killed." The words came out flat, factual, devastating. And 3 months later, my sister Serafina discovered evidence of what he'd done. She was going to go to the police. So he killed her too. Made it look like suicide. The room spun. Ilara pressed her hands to her face, trying to breathe, trying to think. When I saw your name on the apartment application, Julian continued, I looked into you. I saw you were a forensic accountant. I saw you changed your name, started over in Seattle. He paused. I arranged for you to get this apartment. Ilara's head snapped up. You what? The Onyx Spire has a 6-month waiting list, but I own the building. I can approve applications. His gray eyes held hers. I needed to know if you knew anything about your father's investigation. I needed to know if you could help me prove what Arthur did. She stood up, paced to the window, paced back. You've been using me? Yes. The honesty was brutal. Since when? She demanded. Since you applied. Since you moved in. Since your application crossed my desk 3 months ago. 3 months. He'd been planning this for 3 months. You manipulated me into living here so you could… What? Pump me for information about my dead father. At first, yes. Julian took a step toward her. But then you sent me that video. Ilara laughed, sharp and bitter. Right, the accidental nude. Must have been a nice bonus. I saw the tattoo. His voice dropped. The exact design Serafina created. And I realized she'd met you. She'd given you that drawing. Do you know what that means? That your sister drew a pretty picture? My sister had visions sometimes. Julian moved closer, his intensity filling the space between them. Premonitions. She told me once she'd met someone who was connected to everything, someone who would help bring the truth to light. He looked at Ilara like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 7 years. I think that person was you. That's insane. Is it? You're a forensic accountant. Your father was investigating Arthur. You're living in my building. You have my dead sister's design permanently marked on your body. He was close enough now that Ilara had to tilt her head back to look at him. Nothing about this is coincidence. So what? You think your sister orchestrated this from beyond the grave? That she drew me a phoenix 7 years ago knowing I'd end up here helping you? I think Serafina knew she was going to die. I think she knew someone would need to finish what she started. His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently touched the edge of Ilara's collar where the phoenix was hidden beneath fabric. And I think she chose you. Ilara should have stepped back, should have told him to leave, should have called a lawyer or the police or anyone. Instead, she stood frozen as Julian's fingers brushed her collarbone, as his eyes dropped to where the tattoo began. I want to see it, he said quietly. The whole thing, please. It was the please that did it, the raw need in his voice. Ilara's hands went to the buttons of her shirt. She undid them slowly, watching his face. His eyes never left hers, even as she pulled the fabric aside to reveal the phoenix in full. The protective film was gone now. The tattoo was healing, the colors vivid against her pale skin. Julian's breath caught. His hand hovered over the design, not quite touching. It's exactly how she drew it, he whispered. Every detail, Ilara. Ilara's voice came out rough. If what you're saying is true, if your father killed mine and made it look random, if he killed your sister… She swallowed hard. Why am I here? Why did you really bring me to this building? His eyes lifted to hers. Because I've spent 7 years trying to prove Arthur Thorne is a murderer, and I've failed. Every lead goes cold, every witness disappears, every piece of evidence gets buried. His jaw clenched. And then you walked into my life with my sister's final message written on your skin. So yes, I manipulated you. I used you because I'm desperate and I'm out of options and you're the first real lead I've had in years. That's messed up, I know. You should have told me the truth from the start. Would you have believed me? Would you have helped me? Ilara thought about it. If a billionaire stranger had told her 3 months ago that her father was murdered as part of a conspiracy, she would have thought he was insane. No, she admitted. So, I lied. Julian stepped back, giving her space. I'm not a good man, Ilara. I'm the son of a monster, and I've done terrible things trying to take him down. I brought you here under false pretenses. I invaded your privacy. I manipulated you into living one floor below me so I could keep tabs on you. He met her eyes. But I'm telling you the truth now, and I'm asking for your help. She should have said no, should have packed her things and left, should have run as far from Julian Thorne and his murdered sister and his criminal father as possible. Instead, she asked, "What do you need me to do?" They spent the next week going through everything. Julian had files on top of files. 7 years of investigation into Arthur Thorne's business dealings, shell corporations, suspicious transactions, witnesses who disappeared, and at the center of it all, the deaths of Detective Robert Vance and Serafina Thorne. Ilara sat on the floor of Julian's penthouse, surrounded by evidence, and felt something shift inside her. Her father hadn't died randomly. He died a hero. He died trying to expose a criminal. "The police report on my father," she said, holding up a file. "It says he was killed in a mugging gone wrong, wallet taken, no witnesses, convenient." Julian said he was sitting across from her close enough that their knees almost touched. Arthur's specialty. Make it look random. Make it look like bad luck. And Serafina, his face went carefully blank, jumped from the balcony of our family's Chicago estate. Depression, breakdown, that was the official story. But you don't believe it. Serafina was terrified the week before she died. She told me she'd found something. Evidence of everything Arthur had done. She was going to take it to the police. Julian's hands clenched. I told her to wait, to let me handle it. I was in Seattle building my company. I told her I'd come to Chicago in a few days and we'd go together. And she didn't wait. She died 3 days later. His voice cracked. If I'd gone sooner, if I'd just listened to how scared she was. Ilara reached out without thinking and covered his hand with hers. "It's not your fault, isn't it? I was her older brother. I should have protected her. You couldn't have known. I should have." He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "That's why I need to finish this. For her and for your father." They stayed like that, hands linked, surrounded by evidence of death and corruption. "I'm working on a case right now," Ilara said slowly. "For my firm, the Sterling Cross Holdings fraud investigation." Julian went very still. "What did you just say?" "Sterling Cross Holdings? They're being investigated for fraud, money laundering. My firm was hired to do the forensic accounting." She looked up. "Why?" He was already moving, pulling up files on his laptop. "What's the parent company? Sterling Cross has to be owned by someone." Ilara pulled out her phone, accessed the confidential files she probably shouldn't have had on her personal device. It's listed as, oh my God. What? Thorne Dynasty Group. The laptop screen showed the same connection. Sterling Cross Holdings, owned by Thorne Dynasty Group, which was Arthur Thorne's original company. "You've been investigating my father," Julian breathed. "For 3 months, and you didn't even know it." Ilara's mind raced. "Who hired my firm? The client is listed as anonymous, but there has to be a record." She made a call, pulled strings, used her access to dig into files she definitely shouldn't have been accessing. 15 minutes later, she had a name. "Gideon Voss," she said. "Does that mean anything to you?" Julian's expression was complicated. "That's my private investigator. I hired him 5 years ago. So, he's the one who hired my firm to investigate Sterling Cross, which means he knew about the connection to your father, which means he manipulated you into this case the same way I manipulated you into this building." Julian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We're all using you, Ilara. I'm sorry." She should have been angry, should have felt violated. Instead, she felt something else. Clarity. Stop apologizing, she said. You gave me a purpose, a chance to get justice for my father. Yes, you manipulated me. Yes, it's messed up. But I'm not some helpless victim. She stood up, started pacing through the evidence. I'm a forensic accountant. This is what I do. I find patterns, I follow money, and I've been building a case against Sterling Cross Holdings for 3 months. How solid is it? Solid enough to prove fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, every transaction, every shell company, every falsified record. She turned to face him. If we can connect Arthur Thorne directly to Sterling Cross Holdings and then connect him to the murders, we have him. Julian stood up, moved toward her. That's a big if, so we make it happen. Ilara lifted her chin. No more secrets, no more manipulation. From now on, we're partners, equal partners. Or I walk. He studied her face for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. Partners. She took it. The handshake lingered, his hand warm and solid around hers. Equal partners, he agreed. Neither of them let go. The following Saturday, an invitation appeared under Ilara's door. Heavy cardstock, formal script. The Onyx Spire Annual Residence Gala, 8 p.m., Penthouse 72, black tie. Your presence is specifically requested. J. Kiara showed up with 3 dresses and a makeup kit. I don't even know if I should go, Ilara protested. Are you insane? The mysterious billionaire specifically requested your presence at a black tie event in his penthouse. You're going. Kiara held up a black silk gown with a plunging neckline. And you're wearing this. That's too much. That's perfect. The phoenix will be visible. You'll be devastating. He won't be able to look away. This isn't about seducing him, Kiara. We're working together to take down his criminal father. Oh, so you're spending every evening in his penthouse going through files, and that's purely professional. Ilara felt her face heat. Yes. Ilara, come on. The man sent you flowers. He touches you every chance he gets. He looks at you like you're the answer to every question he's ever asked. He's grieving his sister. He's obsessed with justice. He's obsessed with you. Kiara pushed the dress into her hands. Wear the dress. Let yourself feel something. You've been locked down since Caleb. At the mention of her ex, Ilara flinched. Caleb was a mistake. Caleb was a controlling jerk who spent 3 years making you feel small. Julian is the opposite of that. Julian is morally gray at best. He manipulated me, and he told you the truth. He's giving you justice for your father. He's letting you be an equal partner. Kiara's voice softened. When was the last time a man treated you like an equal? Never, Ilara realized. Caleb had treated her like a possession. Before Caleb, there had been a series of forgettable relationships with men who wanted her to be smaller, quieter, easier. Julian wanted her sharp, wanted her smart, wanted her exactly as she was. Fine, Ilara said. I'll wear the dress. At 8 p.m. exactly, Ilara stepped off the elevator into Penthouse 72. She'd been here a dozen times over the past week, but always in jeans and sweaters, surrounded by files and coffee cups. This was different. The entire penthouse had been transformed. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Seattle's glittering skyline. A string quartet played in the corner. 50 residents mingled, all of them dripping in wealth and designer labels. And Julian found her within 30 seconds. He materialized at her side, devastatingly handsome in a black tuxedo, and handed her a glass of champagne without a word. His eyes dropped to her neckline. To the phoenix. You wore it, he said quietly. The dress, Kiara picked it out. I meant the tattoo. You made sure it was visible. Ilara felt heat creep up her neck. I thought that was the point. Serafina gave me this design. I should honor that. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. He took the champagne from her hand, set both glasses on a passing tray, and led her to the makeshift dance floor. His hand settled on the small of her back, burning through the silk. Her hand went to his shoulder. They fit together perfectly. "Everyone's staring?" Ilara murmured. "Let them," he pulled her closer. "You're the most beautiful woman in the room. I'd stare too." "You're biased." "I'm honest." His thumb traced small circles against her back. "How are you feeling about everything we discussed? You mean about the fact that my entire life has been shaped by a murder I didn't know was a murder? Or about the fact that I'm working with the son of my father's killer to take down a criminal empire?" "Either. Both." Ilara looked up at him, really looked at the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he held himself like he was carrying the weight of 7 years of grief and guilt. "I'm angry," she said honestly, "at your father, at the universe, at the fact that my dad died trying to do the right thing and nobody even knew he was a hero. He was, and now I get to finish what he started." She let herself lean into Julian slightly. "So, I guess I'm also grateful to you for telling me the truth, even though you manipulated me into your apartment." "Even though," she paused, "can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why did you really respond to my video that night? You could have ignored it, could have just pretended it never happened." Julian's hand tightened on her back. "You want the honest answer?" "Always." "Because you looked free." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "In that video, you looked like someone who'd just broken out of a cage. And I haven't felt free in 7 years. I wanted to know what that felt like." The music swelled around them. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Julian," a cool voice interrupted. They both turned. A woman approached, stunning in a white gown that probably cost more than Ilara's car, ice blonde hair, calculating blue eyes, smile sharp enough to cut. Bianca Rossi. Ilara had seen her around the building, hard to miss someone who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "You must be the new tenant everyone's whispering about." Bianca's eyes ran over Ilara, lingering on the phoenix tattoo with barely concealed distaste. "I'm Bianca. Julian and I are business partners." "Just business partners," Julian said, his voice cooler than Ilara had ever heard it. "Of course." Bianca's smile didn't waver. Though we've known each other for years, since before Julian became quite so reclusive, she turned her attention back to Ilara. "And you are Ilara Brooks. How lovely." "And what is it you do, Ilara?" "I'm a forensic accountant." Something flickered in Bianca's eyes. "How fascinating. And you just moved to Seattle 3 months ago. What a coincidence. That's exactly when Julian started leaving his penthouse again." Bianca's tone was light, but her eyes were ice. "He's been quite mysterious about what's been occupying his time." Julian's hand on Ilara's back became possessive. "If you'll excuse us, Bianca, we're dancing." He pulled Ilara away, but not before Ilara caught the look on Bianca's face. Jealousy. Pure, undiluted jealousy. "She's in love with you," Ilara said once they were out of earshot. "She's in love with the idea of me, the money, the status. Have you two ever?" "No, and we never will." Julian pulled her closer, almost protectively. "Bianca's been pushing for more for years. I've never been interested." "Why not? She's beautiful. She's calculating. Everything she does is a transaction." His eyes found Ilara's. "You're the opposite of that. You don't know that. Maybe I'm just better at hiding it. You sent me a topless video by accident and then tried to apologize 17 times. You're terrible at hiding things." Ilara laughed despite herself. "Fair point." They danced for another song, then another, and Ilara let herself pretend, just for a moment, that this was simple, that she was just a woman dancing with a devastatingly attractive man at a fancy party, that there was no murder investigation, no dead father, no criminal conspiracy. But reality crashed back in when they finally left the dance floor, and Julian leaned close to whisper, "I need to show you something." Come with me." He led her through the penthouse, past the other guests, into his private study. He closed the door behind them, and the sounds of the party became muted. The study was all dark wood and leather chairs. But what caught Ilara's attention was the painting on the wall. A phoenix, identical to her tattoo, watercolor on canvas, the colors vibrant even after all these years. "Serafina painted this," Julian said, "the year before she died. She told me it was meant for someone specific, someone she'd never met but knew needed it." Ilara walked toward the painting, transfixed. "She gave me the sketch version in Chicago." "I know, which means she met you, recognized you as the person this was meant for, and gave you a copy." Julian stood beside her. "What did you two talk about that day in the coffee shop?" Ilara tried to remember. It had been 7 years ago, a random afternoon during a boring conference. "I was upset," she said slowly. "I'd just gotten off the phone with Caleb, my boyfriend at the time. He was angry that I'd gone to Chicago without him, told me I was being selfish, that I should have stayed home." Julian's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. "I was sitting alone, and this woman sat down across from me. Just started talking. Asked if I was okay." Ilara touched the edge of the painting's frame. "I told her I was fine. She said I was lying, that she could see the cage I was in, even if I couldn't see it yet." "What else?" "She asked me what I'd do if I were free, what I'd choose for myself." Ilara's voice went quiet. "I told her I'd get a tattoo, something permanent, something that proved I could make my own choices. And she drew the phoenix right there on a napkin." "Did she say anything else?" "She told me to keep it, that one day I'd need it more than I needed anything else, that it would remind me I was stronger than the ashes." Ilara turned to look at Julian. Then she left. "I never even got her full name." Julian was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. "She knew. Somehow Serafina knew you'd escape Caleb. Knew you'd need that reminder. Knew you'd end up here. That's impossible." "Is it?" He stepped closer. "My sister had a gift. She saw things, connections, futures. Our father called it nonsense. I called it intuition, but Serafina always knew." "So what? She had a vision that I'd help you take down Arthur?" "Maybe. Or maybe she just knew you'd need to remember you could fly." His hand came up, fingers tracing the phoenix on her chest with devastating gentleness. "And maybe she knew I'd need someone who understood what it meant to rise from ashes." Ilara's breath caught. Julian's fingers were warm against her skin, tracing the lines of the tattoo with something like reverence. "This is complicated," she whispered. "I know you manipulated me into living here." "I did. You're using me to take down your father." "Yes. I should hate you for that. You should." His hands spread flat against her sternum over the phoenix's heart. "Do you?" Ilara looked up at him. At this morally gray, manipulative, grief-stricken man who dragged her into his 7-year quest for vengeance, who'd lied to her and used her, and still somehow made her feel more seen than anyone else ever had. "No," she admitted. "I don't hate you." "What do you feel?" She could lie, could pull away, could maintain the professional distance that had been crumbling all week. Instead, she said, "I feel like your sister knew exactly what she was doing when she gave me this design." Julian's eyes darkened. "Ilara. And I feel like maybe being manipulated into your orbit was the best thing that's ever happened to me." He kissed her, or she kissed him. Later, Ilara wouldn't be able to say who moved first. All she knew was that one moment they were standing there, tension crackling between them, and the next his mouth was on hers, and her hands were in his hair, and nothing else existed. He kissed like he did everything else, intense, focused, completely consuming. His hand slid from her chest to her waist, pulling her flush against him, his other hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head to deepen the kiss. Elara made a sound that should have been embarrassing, but she didn't care. She'd been fighting this pull between them all week, fighting the way her heart raced when he was near, fighting the way his touch set her on fire. She was done fighting. Julian backed her against his desk, his body solid and warm against hers. The kiss turned desperate. His hand slid down her thigh, bunching the silk of her dress. "We shouldn't." Elara gasped against his mouth. "I know. There are 50 people outside that door. I don't care." He kissed her throat, teeth scraping against sensitive skin. "Tell me to stop." She should. This was reckless, complicated. They were supposed to be partners, equals, not whatever this was. But when his mouth found the edge of her tattoo, kissing along the phoenix's wings, Elara forgot every reason why this was a bad idea. "Don't stop," she whispered. A sharp knock on the study door shattered the moment. Julian pulled back, breathing hard. Elara tried to straighten her dress with shaking hands. "What?" Julian's voice was rough. "Mr. Thorne, there's a situation." A man's voice, calm and professional. "You need to come out here." Julian closed his eyes, jaw clenched. Then he looked at Elara. "We're not done." "I know." He kissed her once more, quick and possessive, then opened the door. Gideon Voss stood there, 40-ish, sharp-eyed, wearing an expensive suit, the private investigator Elara had only spoken to on the phone. "Sorry to interrupt," Gideon said, though his expression suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "But we have a problem. Downstairs, a visitor for Ms. Brooks." Elara's stomach dropped. "Who?" "He says his name is Caleb Sterling. Claims he's your fiancé." The world stopped. "Caleb? Here in Seattle? In her building?" "That's impossible," Elara whispered. But Gideon's expression said it was very, very possible. Julian's hand found hers, squeezed once. "It's okay. We'll handle this." "You don't understand. Caleb doesn't just show up. He plans, he manipulates. If he's here, it's because Arthur sent him," Gideon finished grimly. "I've been running background checks. Caleb Sterling has been on Arthur Thorne's payroll for the past 5 years. The room spun. 5 years. Which meant Caleb had been working for Arthur when they met, when he proposed, when he spent 3 years controlling every aspect of her life. "He was watching me," Elara said, "the whole time. Arthur sent him to make sure I never looked into my father's death." Julian's expression went dangerous. "Where is he?" "Lobby. The concierge called me before letting him up." "Good." Julian pulled out his phone. "I'm calling security to remove him." "No." Elara's voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. "I'll talk to him. Absolutely not." "Julian, if Caleb is here on Arthur's orders, that means Arthur knows I'm investigating Sterling Cross, which means we're running out of time." She looked at Gideon. "Do you have surveillance recording equipment?" Gideon smiled slowly. "Always." "Then wire me up. Let Caleb say whatever he came to say. Maybe he'll slip up. Give us something we can use." "Or he'll threaten you," Julian said. "Probably. But I'm not afraid of Caleb anymore." Elara touched her tattoo, felt the raised lines under her fingers. "I already flew away from him once. He doesn't get to cage me again." Julian looked at her for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. "We do this my way. You're wired. Gideon and I are listening to everything, and if he so much as touches you, I'm coming down there. Deal." 20 minutes later, Elara stepped off the elevator into the lobby, wearing a wire under her dress and carrying the weight of 7 years of manipulation. Caleb stood by the windows, looking exactly as she remembered. Tall, Handsome in that polished corporate way, expensive suit, perfect hair. The kind of man who looked trustworthy right up until he destroyed you. He turned when he heard her heels on the marble floor. His smile was slow, predatory. "Hello, Ilara." She kept her distance. "How did you find me? You really thought you could hide? A name change and a move across the country?" He laughed. "I've known where you were for 2 years. I just didn't have a reason to collect you until now." Collect? Like she was a possession he'd misplaced. "What do you want, Caleb?" "What I've always wanted. You compliant, quiet, useful." He moved closer. "You look good, by the way. Freedom suits you, though that tattoo is exactly as trashy as I imagined it would be." Ilara's hand went automatically to her chest. Caleb's eyes followed the movement, darkening. "You actually got that ridiculous design, the one you kept going on about. It's not ridiculous. It means something. It means you're desperate for attention." His tone turned sharp. "But we can fix that. You're going to come back with me. We're going to get that monstrosity removed, and you're going to stop this investigation into Sterling Cross Holdings?" There it was. Confirmation that Arthur knew. "And if I refuse?" Ilara asked. "Then I tell your firm about the ring you stole, the family heirloom you pawned for drug money." "I didn't use it for drugs." "No one will care. Your career will be over, and then, tragically, you'll have an accident." Caleb stepped close enough that she could smell his cologne. Still the same scent. It made her stomach turn. "Just like your father did." Rage ignited in Ilara's chest. "You're threatening to kill me." "I'm delivering a message from Arthur Thorne. Stop investigating. Stop helping Julian or people you love start disappearing." His hand shot out, grabbed her wrist. "Starting with that sister of yours, Maya." He was threatening Maya. Ilara yanked her arm back. "Let go of me." "Not until you understand how serious this is. Arthur doesn't make idle threats. Your father learned that. Serafina Thorne learned that." Caleb's grip tightened. "You can learn it the easy way or the hard way." The elevator dinged. Julian stepped out, and the look on his face was murder. Caleb immediately released Ilara's wrist and stepped back, his expression shifting to something polite and innocuous. "Julian Thorne," Caleb said, extending his hand like they were meeting at a business conference. "I'm Caleb Sterling, Ilara's fiancé." Ilara opened the mouth to correct Caleb, to tell Julian this was a lie. But something in Julian's expression stopped her. His eyes met hers for just a fraction of a second, and she saw the calculation there. He wanted her to play along, to see what Caleb would reveal. So instead of denying it, Ilara stayed silent. Julian ignored Caleb's extended hand entirely. "Congratulations! I wasn't aware Ilara was engaged." His voice was pure ice. If Ilara hadn't seen that brief flash of communication, she would have believed he was genuinely hurt. "We keep it private," Caleb said smoothly, his arm sliding around Ilara's waist in a possessive gesture that made her skin crawl. She forced herself not to flinch away. "Long distance has been difficult, but now that I'm in Seattle for business, we can finally be together again." "How fortunate." Julian's eyes stayed locked on Ilara's face. "And what business brings you to Seattle, Mr. Sterling?" "Consulting work. Confidential, I'm afraid." Caleb's hand tightened on Ilara's hip. "But I'm hoping to convince my fiancée to take some time off. She's been working too hard. All those late nights going through files, building cases. It's exhausting." The threat was clear. He knew exactly what she'd been doing. "I'm sure Ms. Brooks can make her own decisions about her workload," Julian said. "Of course, though she does have a tendency to get in over her head." "Don't you, darling?" Caleb looked down at Ilara, his smile warm for anyone watching, but his eyes cold. Remember what happened last time you took on too much? You had that breakdown, had to take 3 months off work. Ilara had never had a breakdown. Caleb was manufacturing a history, planting seeds of doubt about her credibility. I don't remember that, she said quietly. The mind protects us from traumatic memories. Caleb's voice was so gentle, so concerned. It's one of the reasons I worry about you taking on these complex investigations. The stress can be triggering. Julian took a step forward. I think you should leave. I think I should take my fiancé home. Caleb's arm became a cage around Ilara. We have a lot to discuss in private. Ilara stays here. That's not your decision to make. The testosterone in the lobby was suffocating. Ilara felt like a bone being fought over by 2 dogs, and she was done with it. Both of you stop. She pushed away from Caleb, put space between herself and both men. Caleb, we're not engaged. We haven't been together for 3 years. You need to leave. Caleb's mask slipped for just a second, showing the cruelty underneath. Be very careful, Ilara. You know what's at stake. I know you're threatening my sister. I know you're working for Arthur Thorne. I know everything. She lifted her chin. And you just confessed to it on a wire that's recording every word you're saying. Caleb's face went white, then red with rage. His hand moved toward her, but Julian was faster, stepping between them with a physicality that was shocking. Touch her, and I'll break every bone in your hand, Julian said softly. You're making a mistake, Caleb said, backing towards the door. Both of you. Arthur doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And he always collects his debts. His eyes found Ilara's one last time. You have 48 hours to stop the investigation and come back to me, or your sister starts paying for your mistakes. He left. The lobby fell silent, except for the sound of Ilara's ragged breathing. Julian turned to her. Are you okay? No. Yes. I don't know. Her hands were shaking. He threatened Maya. We need to call her. We need to make sure she's safe. Already done. Gideon appeared from wherever he'd been monitoring. I have 2 of my people outside her apartment in Chicago. She's secure. Ilara felt her knees go weak with relief. Julian caught her, his arm around her waist in a way that was nothing like Caleb's possessive grip. This was steadying, supportive. The recording? Julian asked. Gideon got everything. Threats against Ilara, threats against Maya, confirmation that he's working for Arthur, admission of knowledge about your father's death. Gideon smiled grimly. It's enough to bring Caleb in for questioning at minimum. It's not enough to prove Arthur ordered the murders, Ilara said. Caleb didn't explicitly say Arthur killed my father or Serafina, just that they learned lessons. She's right, Julian said. We need more. We need Arthur himself. Ilara pulled away from Julian, started pacing. Her mind was racing, sorting through possibilities and strategies the way she did with forensic accounting. Follow the money. Follow the pattern. Find the break in the chain. Caleb gave us 48 hours, she said slowly, which means Arthur is nervous. We're getting too close to something. The Sterling Cross investigation. Gideon said, You've been building a case for 3 months. You must be near completion. I am. I have enough to prove fraud and money laundering, but the connections to Thorne Dynasty Group are buried under 6 layers of shell companies. It would take a financial expert to trace it back to Arthur specifically. Or it would take Arthur confessing, Julian said. They all looked at each other. We set a trap, Ilara said. We make Arthur think I'm going to destroy the evidence, that I'm scared enough to comply, but we record everything. He won't meet with you directly, Gideon said. He's too careful. Then we give him no choice. Ilara's mind was crystallizing around a plan. I call Caleb back. Tell him I'll do what Arthur wants, but I need to speak to Arthur personally to negotiate terms. Protection for Maya. A guarantee that he'll leave my family alone if I destroy the files. That's insane, Julian said. You'd be walking into a meeting with a man who's killed at least 2 people. Not if I'm wired. Not if you're listening to everything. Not if we have backup ready to move in. She looked at Gideon. Can you set that up? Yes. But Alara, if Arthur suspects for even a second that you're recording him, he'll kill you on the spot. Then I better be convincing. Julian grabbed her arm, pulled her aside while Gideon made phone calls. This is too dangerous. This is necessary. Caleb threatened Maya. Arthur killed my father. He killed your sister. Alara looked up at him. I'm not running from this. I'm not hiding. I'm finishing what my dad started. By putting yourself in the line of fire. By being brave enough to face the monster. She touched his face, felt the tension in his jaw. You've been hunting Arthur for 7 years. Let me help you end this. Julian closed his eyes, leaned into her touch. If something happens to you because I brought you into this, I'll never forgive myself. Then make sure nothing happens to me. He kissed her hard and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When they broke apart, his forehead rested against hers. After this is over, he said quietly, we're going to talk about this thing between us. What thing? The thing where I can't stop thinking about you. Where I want to keep you in my penthouse and never let you out of my sight. Where the thought of Caleb touching you makes me want to commit murder. Heat pooled in Alara's stomach. That sounds possessive. It is. I told you I'm not a good man. Maybe I don't want a good man. She kissed him again, slower this time. Maybe I want someone who's as morally compromised as I'm becoming. Because she was compromised, she was planning to entrap a murderer. She was working with a man who'd manipulated her into an apartment just to use her for revenge. She was falling for someone who freely admitted to being possessive and dangerous, and she didn't care. The old Alara, the one who'd been engaged to Caleb, would have run from this, would have chosen safety over truth, compliance over confrontation. But the phoenix on her chest was a reminder. She'd already burned down her old life. She might as well let the flames consume everything. Gideon finished his call. I can have surveillance set up anywhere in the city within 3 hours. Where do you think Arthur will want to meet? Somewhere he controls, Alara said. Somewhere private. Probably one of his industrial properties. He has a warehouse in the shipping district, Julian said. It's technically owned by one of his shell companies, but I've traced it back to him. He uses it for storage, or for making people disappear, Gideon added grimly. Alara pulled out her phone. Only one way to find out. She called Caleb. He answered on the first ring. I knew you'd see reason, he said. I want to talk to Arthur in person. I'll destroy the files, but I need guarantees about my sister's safety. Arthur doesn't negotiate. Then I guess he doesn't get what he wants. Alara kept her voice steady. I'm a forensic accountant, Caleb. I have copies of everything stored in multiple locations. Encrypted cloud storage, physical drives hidden with lawyers. If anything happens to me or Maya, it all goes to the police automatically. She was lying. She had backups, but nothing that sophisticated. But Caleb didn't know that. There was silence on the other end. Then, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. He hung up. That was a very good bluff, Gideon said appreciatively. I learned from the best. Alara looked at Julian. You've been playing chess with Arthur for 7 years. I'm just following your strategy. My strategy has failed for 7 years. Because you've been playing alone. Now you have a partner. Julian pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. The gesture was so tender it made Alara's chest ache. Her phone rang. Caleb. Tomorrow night, 9:20 p.m., I'll text you the address. Come alone or the deal is off. How do I know Arthur will be there? You don't, but you're out of options, so you'll take the chance. Caleb paused. And Alara, don't try anything stupid. We'll be checking for wires. The line went dead. They'll check for wires, Alara said. Gideon was already typing on his phone. I have something new. Audio implant. Goes under the skin just below the collarbone. Undetectable unless they're doing a full medical scan. You want to put a recording device inside my body? I want to give you the best chance of survival. They'll pat you down. They might use a bug detector, but they won't think to check under your skin. Alara felt sick, but she nodded. Do it. The next 24 hours were a blur of preparation. Gideon brought in a doctor who implanted the audio device in Julian's penthouse, while Alara tried not to think about the fact that she now had technology embedded in her chest, 2 inches from her phoenix tattoo. Julian didn't leave her side. He hovered, bringing her food she couldn't eat, coffee she couldn't drink, his presence both comforting and suffocating. You should rest, he said for the 5th time. I can't. Alara was going through files, memorizing every detail of the Sterling Cross case. If Arthur asked her questions, she needed to sound convincing. I need to be ready. You are ready. You've been ready since the moment you agreed to this insane plan. It's not insane. It's necessary. Julian sat down next to her on the couch, took the files from her hands. Alara, look at me. She did. His gray eyes were storm dark, filled with something she was afraid to name. If this goes wrong, he started, it won't. If it does, I need you to know something. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. Meeting you, even under these circumstances, even with all the manipulation and lies, has been the first time I've felt alive since Serafina died. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. Future things. Happy things. Alara's throat tightened. Julian, I'm saying this now because I might not get another chance. I'm falling for you, probably already fallen. And I know that's complicated and messy and possibly the worst timing in history. But I needed you to know. She kissed him, poured everything she couldn't say into it, all the fear and hope and reckless affection she'd been trying to ignore. When they broke apart, Julian pulled her into his lap, his arms wrapping around her like he could protect her from what was coming. Stay with me tonight, he said against her hair. I don't want you to be alone. Alara should have said no, should have maintained some professional distance, should have slept in her own apartment 1 floor down. Instead, she said, Okay. They moved to his bedroom. Alara had never been in this part of the penthouse. It was unexpectedly intimate. Books on the nightstand, a photograph of a young Serafina on the dresser, evidence of a life lived, not just a showpiece for wealthy guests. Julian gave her one of his shirts to sleep in. It swallowed her, the hem hitting mid-thigh, the sleeves dangling past her fingertips. He changed in the bathroom, came out wearing only sleep pants, and Alara's mouth went dry. She'd known he was fit. But seeing him shirtless was different. Broad shoulders, defined chest and abs, a few scars that suggested his path to billionaire status hadn't been entirely smooth. His eyes tracked over her in his shirt with an intensity that made her shiver. Come here, he said. She went. Let him pull her down onto the bed. Let him arrange them so her head rested on his chest and his arm wrapped around her waist. I can hear your heart, she said. It's racing. I'm terrified of tomorrow. Me too. They lay there in the dark, neither sleeping. Alara traced idle patterns on his chest, felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Anything. That night you responded to my video. You said the Phoenix suited me. How did you know? You didn't know me at all. Julian was quiet for a moment. I saw the look on your face, the joy, the relief, the freedom. His hand found the edge of the shirt, slipped underneath to rest on her hip, skin to skin. And I thought, that's what Serafina wanted, for someone to feel that free, to choose themselves. Do you think she knew we'd end up here? Like this? I think Serafina believed in fate, in signs, in the universe putting the right people in each other's paths. He pulled her closer. I think she saw you that day in Chicago and knew you were important. Maybe not why or how, but she knew. Elara tilted her head up, found his mouth in the darkness. The kiss was slow, exploratory, different from the desperate ones they'd shared before. Julian's hand on her hip tightened, pulled her more fully on top of him. She could feel every hard line of his body through the thin layers of clothing between them. We should sleep, he murmured against her lips, even as his hands slid up her back, taking the shirt with them. We should, she agreed, kissing along his jaw to his throat. Tomorrow is going to be dangerous. Very dangerous. Her teeth scraped his pulse point, and he made a low sound that went straight through her. Elara. Her name was a warning and a plea. She sat up, straddling his hips, and pulled the shirt over her head. The room was dark, but enough moonlight came through the windows that he could see her. See the phoenix spread across her chest, wings stretching toward her shoulders. Julian's hands came up to trace the tattoo, following the lines with reverence. You're so beautiful it hurts to look at you, he said roughly. Then don't look. Elara leaned down, her hair falling around them like a curtain. Feel instead. He did. His hands mapped every inch of her skin like he was memorizing her, the curve of her waist, the dip of her spine, the sensitive spot just below her ribs that made her gasp. When he flipped them over, pinning her beneath him, Elara arched up into the contact. Tell me to stop, Julian said, even as his mouth traced the phoenix's wings, as his tongue followed the lines of the tattoo. Don't stop. Tell me this isn't just adrenaline, fear, the night before danger. Elara grabbed his face, made him look at her. This is me choosing you, choosing this, choosing to feel alive, even if tomorrow everything goes to hell. That broke something in him. His kiss turned consuming, possessive. His hands weren't gentle anymore, and Elara didn't want gentle. She wanted to feel something other than fear, wanted to burn away the memory of Caleb's touch with Julian's, wanted to claim this moment for herself. They came together like a storm, all intensity and desperation and need. Julian whispered her name like a prayer. Elara dug her nails into his shoulders hard enough to leave marks. They moved together until the world narrowed to just this, just them, just the feeling of being completely consumed by another person. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathing hard. Julian pulled a blanket over them, kept her tucked against his chest. That was not a good decision, he said. Probably the worst decision I've made all week. You have terrible judgment. Says the man who manipulated me into his building to use me for revenge. Fair point. He kissed her shoulder. For the record, I stopped using you about 2 days after you moved in. When did you start falling for me? The moment I saw you in that video, looking free for the first time in your life. He tangled his hand in her hair. When did you start falling for me? Elara thought about it. The elevator. When you recognized the tattoo and looked like I'd punched you in the chest, you were so raw, so human. I'd expected a cold billionaire, but you were just a grieving brother. I'm not just anything. I'm obsessed with you. It's probably unhealthy. Definitely unhealthy. She kissed his chest. I'm okay with it. They finally slept as dawn crept over Seattle, wrapped around each other like they could keep the coming danger at bay through sheer force of will. At 8:00 p.m., the next night, Elara stood in front of the mirror in Julian's bathroom, preparing to walk into a warehouse where a murderer waited. She was dressed simply. Jeans, black sweater, boots. The audio implant under her skin was supposedly undetectable, but she still felt hyper-aware of it. Julian came up behind her, his reflection joining hers in the mirror. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Yes, I do, Julian. If anything happens to you, if Arthur so much as threatens you, the whole plan is off. Gideon has people positioned around the warehouse. I'm going to be in a van 2 blocks away listening to everything. You say the code word and we come in." They'd chosen the word carefully, something she could drop into conversation naturally. The word was actually. "I'll be fine. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't take unnecessary risks." Ilara turned to face him. "I promise I'll do everything I can to walk out of that warehouse and come back to you." He kissed her like he was trying to convince her to stay. When they finally broke apart, he pressed something into her hand. A small pendant on a delicate chain. A phoenix. "It was Seraphina's," Julian said. "She wore it every day. I want you to have it for luck." Ilara's eyes stung. She let him fasten it around her neck, the pendant settling just below the audio implant. "I'll bring it back to you," she promised. "Bring yourself back. The pendant is just metal." The drive to the district took 30 minutes. Gideon was driving, Julian in the passenger seat, both of them tense and silent. Ilara sat in the back going over the plan for the 100th time. Walk in, act scared but determined. Demand guarantees for Maya's safety. Get Arthur talking about the murders. Get him to confess on tape. Get out alive. Simple. Absolutely insane. But simple. They parked 2 blocks from the warehouse. Gideon ran a final check on the audio equipment. "You're live," he said. "We can hear everything. We'll be monitoring from here." Julian opened the back door, pulled Ilara out and into his arms, held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "Come back to me," he whispered. "I will. One more kiss." Then she was walking alone down the dark street toward the warehouse, toward Arthur Thorne, toward the truth about her father's death. The warehouse was exactly as ominous as she'd expected. Concrete building, broken windows, graffiti on the walls, a single light above the entrance. The door was unlocked. Ilara stepped inside and the door clanged shut behind her. The interior was mostly empty. Concrete floor, high ceiling with exposed beams, shadows everywhere. And in the center, lit by a single work light, stood Caleb. He wasn't alone. 3 men flanked him, all of them large and armed. "Ilara, right on time," Caleb smiled. "Arms up. We need to check you for wires." She lifted her arms. One of the men patted her down thoroughly, professionally, checked her pockets, her boots, even ran a bug detector over her. It beeped near her phone. "Leave it," Caleb said. "Phone goes on the table." Ilara set her phone on a nearby crate, her only connection to Julian and Gideon gone. But the implant stayed silent, undetected. "Satisfied?" she asked. "Almost." Caleb stepped close, his hands going to her neck. For a horrible moment she thought he'd found the pendant, the implant, something, but he just examined her throat, then stepped back. "You're clean. Good girl." "I'm not your anything. Where's Arthur?" "Right here." A man stepped out of the shadows at the far end of the warehouse. 60s, silver hair, expensive suit that looked wrong in this environment. Cold blue eyes that reminded her painfully of Julian's gray ones. Arthur Thorne looked like someone's distinguished grandfather, like a man who donated to charities and attended the opera. He looked nothing like a killer. "Ilara Brooks," Arthur said, his voice cultured and calm. "Though you prefer Vance now, don't you? Running from your past." "I prefer not being murdered like my father was." "Ah, so my son has been filling your head with conspiracy theories." Arthur moved closer with measured steps. Robert Vance died in a random mugging 7 years ago. Tragic, but hardly my fault. You had him killed because he was investigating your money laundering operation. Prove it." Ilara forced herself to breathe steadily. This was the moment. Get him talking. Get him comfortable. Get him to reveal the truth. "I don't need to prove it," she said. "I just need to destroy the evidence I've collected on Sterling Cross Holdings and disappear. That's why I'm here to negotiate terms." Arthur smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "And what terms did you have in mind?" "I destroy all the files linking Sterling Cross to Thorne Dynasty Group. I stop the investigation. I convince my firm the case is a dead end." She lifted her chin. "In exchange, you leave my sister alone. You leave me alone. You let me walk away from Seattle and never contact me again." "Interesting proposal, but I'm curious about something." Arthur circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. "Why would I trust you to actually destroy the evidence? What's to stop you from keeping copies?" "The fact that I value my life and my sister's life more than I value justice for a father I barely remember." It hurt to say. Hurt to pretend Robert Vance meant nothing. But she needed Arthur to believe she was broken, scared, willing to compromise. "Your father was a sanctimonious fool," Arthur said conversationally. "He thought the law meant something. Thought he could take down a man like me with spreadsheets and search warrants." He laughed. "I tried to warn him off, offered him money, threatened his family. He refused to listen." Ilara's heart pounded. "Keep him talking." "So you had him killed. I had him removed. There's a difference. Killing is personal. Removal is just business." Arthur stopped in front of her. "Caleb arranged it, made it look like a mugging. Your father didn't suffer, if that's any consolation." The audio implant was recording every word, but Ilara needed more. Needed him to confess to Serafina, too. "And your daughter?" she asked. "Was that business, too?" Arthur's expression darkened. "Serafina was weak, sentimental. She found your father's original investigation files in my office, started asking questions." His voice turned cold. "She threatened to go to the police, to destroy everything I'd built. I gave her a chance to reconsider, but she didn't. No, she was stubborn, like her brother." Arthur's hand shot out, grabbed Ilara's face in a painful grip. "Is that what you wanted to hear? Confirmation that I killed them both? Does it make you feel better?" "It makes me feel like I understand what kind of monster you are." He released her with a shove. "Monster, hero, it's all perspective. I did what was necessary to protect my empire. Your father and my daughter were collateral damage. They were people. They were obstacles." Arthur straightened his cuffs. "And now, so are you." The temperature in the warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. "We had a deal," Ilara said, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. "We had a negotiation. I never agreed to anything." Arthur nodded to Caleb. "Take her to the back. Make it look like an accident. Maybe a fall from a great height, like Serafina. Poetic, don't you think?" The man grabbed Ilara's arm. She struggled, fought, but he was twice her size and trained for this. She was being dragged toward the back of the warehouse, toward whatever method of execution Arthur had planned, when the lights went out. Complete darkness. Someone shouted. A gunshot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space. Ilara dropped to the ground, covering her head. More gunshots, voices yelling, the sound of a door being breached. Then lights, blinding tactical lights from what seemed like dozens of sources. "Police! Everyone on the ground, now!" Officers flooded the warehouse from every direction. Ilara looked up to see Caleb being tackled, Arthur being surrounded, his men dropping their weapons and surrendering. And standing in the doorway, backlit like an avenging angel, was Julian. He crossed the warehouse in seconds, dropped to his knees beside her, pulled her into his arms. "I've got you. You're safe. I've got you." Ilara was shaking so hard she couldn't speak. Julian held her tighter, one hand cradling her head, the other wrapped around her back. "The signal jammer," she finally managed. "You couldn't hear me. We heard everything until you walked in. Then the audio cut out." His voice was rough. "We knew something was wrong. Gideon had thermal imaging on the building. We saw them move you toward the back, and we breached early." Arthur confessed. "To everything. My father, Serafina, all of it." "I know. We got it. The signal came back for about 90 seconds before they activated the jammer. It was enough." Julian pulled back to look at her face, check her for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "No, I'm okay. Terrified, but okay." A woman in a tactical vest approached. "Ms. Brooks, I'm Detective Miller. We need to get your statement, but are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm fine. The audio implant we recovered from the preliminary recording is going to be crucial evidence. You were incredibly brave." Brave? Ilara didn't feel brave. She felt like she'd nearly died, and only survived through sheer luck. She watched as Arthur was cuffed, read his rights. He looked at Julian with pure hatred. "You'll regret this, boy," Arthur said. "I'm still your father. That blood doesn't wash off." "No," Julian said quietly, his arm still around Ilara. "But I'm Serafina's brother. That's all that matters. And you murdered her. Live with that in prison." Arthur was led away. Caleb went next, his expression blank, defeated. Gideon appeared, looking satisfied. "We got him. Both of them. The recording plus the testimony plus the evidence Ilara built on the Sterling Cross case. Arthur Thorne is going to prison for the rest of his life." It should have felt triumphant. Justice served, 7 years of investigation finally paying off. Instead, Ilara just felt exhausted. The next few hours were a blur of statements, evidence, documentation, medical checks. The police wanted the audio implant removed at a hospital. They wanted detailed accounts of everything Arthur had said. They wanted to know about Caleb's threats, about the investigation, about every detail. It was nearly 3 a.m. when Julian finally brought Ilara back to the Onyx spire. She'd expected him to take her to her apartment on 71, but the elevator went to 72. "You're staying with me," he said. Not a question. She didn't argue. Inside his penthouse, Julian locked the door, set the security system, and then just stood there looking at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "I thought I'd lost you," he said quietly. "When the signal cut out and we couldn't hear anything. When Gideon said they were moving you, I thought—" Ilara crossed to him, put her hands on his chest. "But you didn't. I'm here. We're okay." "We're not okay. We won't be okay for a while." He touched her face with shaking hands. "I nearly got you killed. You saved my life. You got justice for Serafina and my father. At what cost? You were in that warehouse with a murderer. If we'd been 30 seconds later..." She kissed him to stop the spiral, poured everything she felt into it. Relief, gratitude, affection. Something deeper she wasn't ready to name yet. Julian responded with desperate intensity, backing her toward his bedroom, his hands everywhere like he needed to confirm she was whole, unharmed. They didn't speak. Words felt inadequate. Instead, they communicated through touch, through the way he undressed her carefully, checking for bruises, through the way she pulled him down to the bed, kneading him close, through the way they came together, slower than the night before, more tender. This wasn't adrenaline or fear of the future. This was aftermath. This was survival. This was two people who'd walked through fire and made it out the other side. Afterward, Ilara lay with her head on Julian's chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? Arthur goes on trial. Caleb, too. They'll both go to prison." "I meant, with us." Julian was quiet for a moment, his hand tracing patterns on her back, following the curve of her spine. "I manipulated you into my building," he said slowly. "I used you for revenge. I put you in danger. You should probably run far away from me." "Should I?" "Yes." "What if I don't want to?" His arm tightened around her. "Then I'm going to spend every day proving I'm worth the risk. I'm going to give you the space to choose me freely, not because I orchestrated circumstances. I'm going to do this right." Ilara propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "What does doing it right look like?" "I don't know. I've never done this before." His hand came up to cup her face. "But I know I want to try. I know I want you in my life. In my home. Not because you're one floor down and I maneuvered you there, but because you choose to be here." "I choose to be here. You're still processing trauma. You nearly died. You should take time. Think about it." "Julian," Ilara kissed him once, soft and certain. "I choose you. I choose this. I'm not running." Relief flooded his expression. He pulled her down, kissed her until they were both breathless. "Move in with me," he said against her lips. "Really?" "Move in. Not your apartment one floor down. Here, with me." "That's fast. We solved a 7-year-old double murder together and took down a criminal empire. I think we can handle cohabitation." Ilara laughed. It felt good to laugh. Okay, yes. I'll move in with you." She settled back against his chest. "But I'm keeping my apartment for now, just in case you turn out to be secretly terrible." "Fair." He kissed the top of her head. "Though I should warn you, I'm very territorial, possessive. I'll probably hover." "I can handle it. And I'm still morally gray. I manipulated you. I'd do it again if it meant getting justice for Serafina." "I know. I'm morally gray now, too. I walked into a warehouse to entrap a murderer. I'm okay with the gray areas." They fell quiet. Outside the windows, Seattle sparkled in the darkness. "Do you think Serafina knew?" Ilara asked softly. "That day in Chicago when she gave me the sketch. Do you think she knew we'd end up here?" "I think Serafina saw two people who needed each other and decided to help fate along." Julian's voice was tender. "She believed in signs, in the universe putting the right people together at the right time." "Even if the right time involved murder, investigations, and criminal conspiracies?" "Especially then. She'd say we needed something big enough to break through both our walls." Ilara thought about that, about the girl she'd been in that Chicago coffee shop, trapped in a relationship with Caleb, but not admitting it yet, about the woman she'd become. Brave enough to get a tattoo, to change her name, to walk into danger for justice. "She was right," Ilara said. "I needed the Phoenix to remember I could fly, and I needed you to remember why I was fighting in the first place." Julian held her closer. "Not just for revenge, for the possibility that something good could come from all the pain." The trial ended a week later. Arthur Thorne was convicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder, money laundering, fraud, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges. The judge gave him life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ilara and Julian were there for the verdict. They held hands in the courtroom gallery as Arthur was led away. He looked old, suddenly diminished. Just a man who'd made monstrous choices and was finally facing consequences. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Julian made a brief statement about justice for Serafina. Ilara said nothing, just stood beside him, solid and certain. That night they hosted a small gathering at the penthouse. Maya flew in from Chicago. Gideon came, looking satisfied with the investigation's conclusion. Kiara made an appearance, immediately clicking with Maya in that way Ilara had hoped they would. Bianca even stopped by briefly with her architect boyfriend, offering congratulations that seemed genuine. It wasn't a celebration, exactly. Too many people had died for that. But it was a closing, an acknowledgement that justice had been served and life could move forward. After everyone left, Ilara and Julian stood on the terrace again. It had become their spot, the place where they processed and planned and just existed together. "What do we do now?" Ilara asked. "Now that the quest is over, the villain is defeated. Justice is served. Now we live." Julian pulled her against his chest. "We build something that isn't about revenge or the past. We choose happiness." "I don't know if I remember how to be just happy. Not fighting anything. Then we'll learn together." He turned her to face him. "I want the boring stuff with you, Ilara. Grocery shopping and arguing about what to watch on TV. And waking up in the middle of the night because you stole all the blankets." "I don't steal blankets." "You absolutely do. You're a blanket thief and a terrible cook, and you leave coffee cups everywhere." His smile was tender. "And I love every chaotic thing about you." Ilara laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "You're not exactly perfect either. You're controlling and possessive, and you alphabetize your books." "Alphabetizing is logical. Alphabetizing is insane." They were both grinning now, foreheads pressed together. "I want this," Ilara said softly. "The boring stuff. The happy stuff. I want to build a life that isn't defined by what we lost." "Then that's what we'll do." Julian kissed her, slow and sweet. "Starting tomorrow. Tonight, I just want to hold you and be grateful we both survived." They went to bed early, tangled together in the dark. Ilara traced the phoenix pendant at her throat, felt the skeleton key beside it. Two symbols, one for rising from ashes, one for opening new doors. Serafina had given her both, in a way. Had set this whole thing in motion 7 years ago in a Chicago coffee shop because she'd seen something in Ilara that Ilara hadn't seen in herself yet. The potential to fly, the courage to walk through fire, the strength to choose love even when it was complicated and messy and morally gray. "Thank you," Ilara whispered into the darkness, speaking to a woman she'd met once and would never see again. "For the phoenix, for your brother, for believing I was worth saving." Beside her, Julian's breathing was steady, peaceful. She closed her eyes and let herself drift off, knowing that tomorrow would bring normal things, work and laughter and the mundane joys of building a life with someone. The phoenix had risen, the cage was broken, and Ilara was finally, completely free. Outside the windows, Seattle sparkled like a promise, like possibility, like the future she'd fought so hard to claim. And somewhere, Ilara chose to believe, her father and Serafina were watching, knowing their deaths hadn't been in vain, knowing the people they'd left behind had found each other and chosen to build something beautiful from all the broken pieces. The wrong text message to the wrong contact, the right tattoo at the right time, the perfect amount of chaos to break down walls and let love in. It had all led here, to this moment, to this man, to this life, and Ilara wouldn't change a single thing. The end. Moral lesson. Sometimes the most painful chapters of our lives are not just endings, but the necessary fire required for us to be reborn. We often view our traumas and accidental mistakes as burdens, but as Ilara and Julian discovered, the universe has a way of weaving our broken threads into a tapestry of justice and connection. The deepest lesson here is that you cannot find true freedom until you are brave enough to reclaim your own narrative. Freedom isn't just the absence of a cage, it is the courage to fly toward a truth that others tried to bury. When we choose to rise, not in spite of our ashes but because of them, we finally become the people we were always meant to be. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in my next story.